The woman stood near the back of the room, holding her mother's hand gently, as if she was afraid to let go. The hall was not very big, but it felt crowded. Soft lights hung from the ceiling, and a shiny black piano sat at the front like it belonged to someone important. People filled the chairs, talking quietly, laughing, and checking their phones while waiting for the next performance to begin. The woman did not look like the others. She wore plain clothes, clean but simple, nothing fancy. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her face showed signs of a life that had been busy and sometimes hard. She was calm, but inside her chest, her heart was beating faster than she wanted. Her mother stood beside her, slightly bent, leaning on a cane. Age had slowed her body, but her eyes were still full of warmth. The woman leaned closer to her mother and whispered something soft. Her mother smiled and squeezed her hand. It was a small moment, but it meant everything to her. This was why they were here. At the front of the room, the event organizer announced that there was a short break before the next scheduled pianist. People clapped politely. Some stood up to stretch. Others talked louder now that the music had stopped. The woman took a deep breath. She had been thinking about this moment all evening, telling herself not to be afraid, telling herself that it was okay even if the answer was no. Slowly, she walked toward the organizer. Her steps were careful, almost hesitant. She did not want to interrupt or cause trouble. When she reached the front, she waited for the right moment, then spoke in a quiet but clear voice. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Can I play this for my mom?" The organizer looked surprised. He glanced at her clothes, then at the piano, then back at her face. For a second, he did not answer. People nearby turned their heads, curious. A few raised their eyebrows. Someone at the side let out a small laugh, thinking it was a joke. "Are you on the program?" the organizer asked. She shook her head. "No, I just wanted to play one piece. Only one." The organizer hesitated. He looked at his watch. He looked at the crowd. Then he shrugged slightly, as if unsure but not caring enough to argue. "All right," he said. "Just one. Make it quick." A few people chuckled. Some whispered to each other. The woman thanked him with a small nod and turned toward the piano. She could feel eyes on her back. She heard someone say, "This should be interesting," in a mocking tone. Another voice said, "Anyone can play these days." Her mother watched from her seat, hands folded, heart full of mixed feelings. She felt proud but also worried. She knew how people could be. She knew how easily they judged. Still, she trusted her daughter. The woman reached the piano bench and stopped for a moment. She did not sit right away. She looked around the room, at all the faces staring at her. Some looked bored. Some looked amused. A few looked annoyed, as if she was wasting their time. She lowered her eyes, took another deep breath, and sat down. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys, but she did not play yet. She closed her eyes for just a second. In her mind, the noise of the room faded away. She was no longer in a hall full of strangers. She was somewhere else, somewhere quiet and familiar. She remembered a small room from many years ago. A worn piano stood near a window. Her mother sat beside her, correcting her posture, reminding her to slow down, to feel the music instead of rushing through it. Those memories came back like an old friend. A cough echoed in the hall. Someone shifted in their seat impatiently. The woman opened her eyes. She looked toward her mother. Their eyes met. Her mother gave a gentle nod, the kind that said everything without words. The woman's shoulders relaxed slightly. Before her fingers touched the keys, more whispers floated through the room. "Who is she? She doesn't look like a pianist. This should be quick." The woman heard some of it, but she chose not to react. She had learned long ago that explaining herself to everyone was impossible. Some people would only understand after seeing the truth for themselves. She placed her fingers carefully on the piano. The keys felt familiar under her touch, like something she had never really left behind. Still, she waited one more moment. This was not about showing off. This was not about proving anyone wrong. This was about her mother. Her mother had given up so much. Time, energy, dreams of her own. She had stood by her through years of practice, through moments of doubt, through choices that led life in different directions. This single piece of music was her way of saying thank you. The woman straightened her back and finally pressed the first key. The sound had not yet filled the room, but something had already changed. The laughter faded. The whispers slowed. Even those who had been mocking leaned in slightly, without realizing it. As the first note lingered in the air, the woman focused only on the piano and the quiet smile on her mother's face. Whatever happened next, she knew she had made the right choice by asking one simple question. Can I play this for my mom? And with that, her story truly began. The first note floated through the hall, soft but clear. It was not loud, and it did not try to impress anyone. Still, it was enough to make a few heads turn. Some people who had been talking stopped mid-sentence without realizing why. The sound felt steady, like it knew exactly where it was going. The woman's hands moved slowly at first. She was careful, almost gentle, as if she was greeting an old friend after a long time apart. Each note followed the next with calm confidence. There was no rush, no show, just music. A man in the second row leaned back in his chair, surprised. He had expected something messy or awkward, maybe a few wrong notes that would end the moment quickly. Instead, what he heard was controlled and thoughtful. He frowned slightly, listening more closely now. The woman did not look at the audience. Her eyes stayed on the keys, her face relaxed but focused. The piano responded to her touch easily, as if it remembered her. Years might have passed, but the connection was still there. At the back of the room, someone let out a quiet laugh, trying to keep the mood light. But the laugh faded quickly when the music continued without breaking. The sound was growing fuller now, warmer. It carried a feeling that was hard to explain, something between comfort and sadness. Her mother sat very still. She did not move her hands or shift in her seat. She watched her daughter the way only a mother can, with pride mixed with worry, and a deep sense of knowing. She recognized the way her daughter's shoulders moved slightly with the rhythm. She recognized the way her head tilted during certain phrases. These were things she had seen many years ago. The woman's mind was quiet as she played. Outside thoughts slipped away. Bills, worries, lost chances. All of it faded into the background. Right now, there was only the piano, the sound, and the reason she was there. More people began to notice the change in the room. Phones were lowered. Conversations stopped completely. Even the organizer, who had allowed her to play without much thought, stood near the side, listening with growing attention. The music grew stronger, not louder, but deeper, carried emotion without forcing it. It did not beg for applause. It did not try to be clever. It simply told a story, one note at a time. A woman in the front row felt her chest tighten. She did not know why. The music reminded her of something she could not clearly remember. A moment from long ago. Maybe a memory she had forgotten she still carried. She blinked and focused harder, surprised by her own reaction. The woman at the piano shifted into a new section of the piece. Her fingers moved faster now, but still smooth, still controlled. There were no sharp movements, no signs of struggle. Everything looked natural, like breathing. A man who had laughed earlier leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His smile was gone. He was listening closely, almost studying her hands. He realized then that this was not luck. This was not a hobby. This was something built over many years. The woman's foot pressed the pedal gently, letting the sound blend and linger. The notes filled the hall, reaching the corners of the room. The air felt different now, heavier, quieter. Even the smallest movements sounded too loud against the music. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. She did not wipe them away. She let them fall slowly, one by one. Each note felt like a message meant only for her. It was not about the performance. It was about a bond that had survived time and sacrifice. As the woman played, memories returned again. Late nights, cold mornings, long hours of practice when her fingers hurt and her back ached. Moments when she wanted to quit. Moments when life demanded other choices. She had stepped away from the piano, but the piano had never really left her. The audience could feel something real was happening. even if they did not know the full story yet. This was not just sound. It was experience. It was feeling shaped by time. The woman reached a softer passage, and the music quieted again. Felt like a pause, a breath. No one dared to move. No one dared to cough or shift. The room was completely still. The organizer glanced at his watch again but did not say anything this time. He had forgotten about time. The woman's hands slowed, then held a note just long enough to let it settle. Her shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. She did not look up. She stayed inside the music. People who had laughed earlier now felt a strange mix of embarrassment and respect. They realized how quickly they had judged her, how wrong they had been. The music began to build again, leading toward something bigger. There was a sense of direction now, a feeling that the story was moving forward. The woman's fingers danced across the keys with ease, confidence growing with every phrase. Her mother leaned forward slightly, unable to stop herself. She smiled through her tears. The woman at the piano felt it too. She felt the room listening, truly listening. She did not need to look to know it. The silence told her everything. The final notes of this section rang out, clear and strong, hanging in the air for a moment longer than expected. And just before the audience could react, she moved into the next part of the piece, carrying them with her, deeper into the music. The music moved forward with quiet strength. It did not rush, but it did not hesitate either. Each phrase felt carefully chosen, like words spoken by someone who knew exactly what they wanted to say. The woman's hands stayed steady, her fingers pressing the keys with purpose and care. The room felt smaller now, not because people had moved, but because everyone's attention had narrowed to one place. The piano was no longer just an object at the front of the hall. It had become the center of everything. A few people shifted in their seats, not from boredom, but from emotion they did not expect. Some crossed their arms. Some rested their chins in their hands. Faces that once showed amusement now showed focus. The woman's playing grew more expressive. The melody rose and fell like a conversation, sometimes gentle, sometimes firm. There was a confidence in her movements that could not be learned quickly. It came from years of knowing the instrument, of understanding how much pressure to use, when to hold back and when to let the sound breathe. Her mother watched closely. She noticed small details others missed. The way her daughter's left hand supported the melody without overpowering it. The way her fingers curved naturally, never stiff, never careless. These were signs of deep training, not casual practice. The woman's face remained calm, but her eyes showed feeling. At times they softened. At times they tightened with focus. She was not performing for praise. She was sharing something personal, something that had lived inside her for a long time. The music shifted again, moving into a more emotional section. The notes felt heavier now, filled with longing and memory. A quiet sadness wrapped itself around the room, not painful, but honest. A man near the aisle felt his throat tighten. He did not know why. He had come to the event to pass time, to hear a few skilled players, nothing more. He did not expect to feel this kind of connection. He swallowed and stayed still. The woman at the piano remembered moments she rarely spoke about. Times when she had chosen responsibility over dreams. Times when she packed away sheet music and told herself it was only temporary. Years passed, and temporary became permanent. Still, the music never truly left her. Even when she was busy, even when life was loud, the piano lived quietly in her memory, waiting. Her hands moved faster now, not wildly, but with clear direction. The sound grew richer. The piano seemed to respond with ease, filling the hall with layers of sound that wrapped around the listeners. Someone in the back wiped their eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. Another person let out a slow breath they did not realize they were holding. The organizer stood with his arms crossed, watching closely. His earlier doubt had vanished. He now looked at the woman with respect, trying to understand who she was and where she had learned to play like this. The woman's foot pressed the pedal with care, allowing the notes to blend smoothly. The sound lingered just long enough to touch something deep inside the room. Her mother's hands trembled slightly as she rested them in her lap. Memories flooded back. Long evenings spent listening to practice sessions. Quiet encouragement given during moments of frustration. Pride kept hidden so it would not add pressure. The woman's playing softened again, pulling the room into a gentle calm. The shift was smooth, almost unnoticed, but everyone felt it. The music spoke softly now, like a secret shared between close friends. No one moved. Even breathing seemed too loud. The woman's shoulders relaxed as she leaned into the rhythm. She was no longer thinking about the audience. She was not thinking about judgment or laughter. She was simply playing. As the melody unfolded, a sense of truth filled the room. This was not just talent. This was a life shaped by discipline, sacrifice, and quiet strength. People who had judged her by her appearance now felt a sense of shame. They realized how easily they had underestimated someone they did not know. The music reached another turning point. The woman's hands crossed briefly, then returned to their places with ease. The movement was smooth and confident, done without effort or show. A soft sound escaped from the audience. Not applause, but a shared reaction of surprise and admiration. It faded quickly, replaced by silence once again. The woman's breathing stayed steady. Her fingers never missed a note. Each sound landed exactly where it needed to be. Her mother leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed but peaceful. Tears continued to fall, but her smile never faded. The woman felt a deep warmth spread through her chest. She knew her mother understood what this moment meant. That understanding mattered more than any applause. The music slowed slightly, creating space. The notes felt thoughtful, reflective, as if looking back on a long road traveled. The room felt suspended in time. No one checked their phone. No one whispered. No one looked away. The woman held a note gently, then let it fade into silence. She paused, just for a breath, letting the feeling settle. The audience waited, unsure if the piece was ending or simply resting. Then, with calm certainty, she continued, guiding the music forward once more, deeper and stronger than before. The music continued with a quiet strength that felt deeper than before. It was no longer just beautiful. It carried weight, like it had lived a long life before reaching this room. Each note sounded intentional, shaped by time and experience. The woman's hands moved with steady confidence. There was no fear left in her fingers. Whatever nervousness she had felt earlier was gone. She trusted the music now, and the music trusted her. People in the audience began to sense that this performance was not only about skill. There was a story inside the sound, one that could not be learned from books alone. Felt lived. A few listeners exchanged brief looks, as if silently asking each other the same question. Who was she? How did someone like her carry this level of mastery so quietly? The woman leaned slightly closer to the piano as the melody deepened. Her shoulders relaxed, her posture natural. She played as if the piano was an extension of her own body. Her thoughts drifted, but not in a distracting way. They moved gently through memories she had not visited in a long time. Early mornings when the world was quiet, fingers stiff from cold keys. Her mother sitting nearby, listening patiently, never rushing her, never forcing her to be perfect. Back then, music had been her world. Dreams were clear and simple. Practice led to progress. Progress led to hope. She believed the road ahead would always make sense. Life, however, had other plans. As the music flowed, the woman remembered the moment when things began to change. Responsibilities grew. Choices became heavier. There were moments when music had to wait while life demanded attention elsewhere. She did not regret those choices. They shaped her. They taught her strength. Still, the piano became quieter in her life, moving from the center to the corner, then slowly into memory. But memory, she now realized, was not the same as loss. Her fingers pressed the keys with renewed emotion. The sound grew fuller, layered with feeling that came from both joy and sacrifice. The piano responded warmly, filling the hall with a richness that wrapped around every listener. In the audience, a woman clasped her hands together tightly. She felt the music touch something personal, something she had buried under years of routine. She did not know the performer, but she understood the feeling of setting dreams aside. The organizer took a small step forward, drawn closer without meaning to. He was no longer watching the time. He was listening for meaning. The woman's mother watched her daughter with a calm smile through tears. She knew this sound. She had heard it before, long ago, in quieter rooms without an audience. Back then, it was practice. Tonight, it was truth. The music shifted again, moving into a powerful section. The notes carried determination, resilience, and quiet pride. The woman's hands moved faster now, but never lost control. Each movement was precise, guided by instinct built over many years. People leaned forward in their seats. The room felt held by the sound, as if the music had gently closed a door behind them, leaving nothing else outside to distract. No one whispered. No one moved. The silence between notes felt just as important as the notes themselves. The woman's breathing stayed even. Her face showed focus but also peace. She was exactly where she needed to be. As the melody unfolded, small details revealed her mastery. The way she balanced strength and softness. The way she allowed certain notes to linger while letting others pass quickly. These choices could not be accidental. A man who had once smiled in disbelief now shook his head slowly, amazed. He felt humbled by how wrong his first judgment had been. The music grew brighter, lifting the heavy emotion into something hopeful. Felt like sunrise after a long night. The woman's fingers danced lightly, confident and free. Her mother's smile widened. Pride shone clearly on her face now, no longer hidden. She felt seen, not by the audience, but by her daughter's music. The woman remembered moments when she thought she had lost this part of herself forever. When years passed without touching a piano. When life felt too full for old dreams. Yet here she was. The sound filled the hall, steady and sure, as if reminding everyone present that some things never truly disappear. They wait. The audience felt the shift. The music was no longer just telling a story of the past. It was speaking to the present and even the future. The woman pressed the pedal gently, letting the sound blend into a warm wave that washed over the room. The piano sang beneath her hands, rich and alive. Tears flowed freely now for some listeners. They did not try to hide them. The music gave permission to feel. The organizer's face softened. He understood now that allowing her to play had been more than a small decision. It had opened a door to something rare. The woman's hands slowed slightly as the piece moved toward another turning point. The melody became thoughtful, reflective, as if looking back one last time before moving forward. She felt a quiet gratitude settle inside her. Gratitude for her mother. Gratitude for the years that shaped her. Gratitude for this moment. The room remained completely still, held by the sound. She played the final notes of this section with care, letting each one fall gently into place. The sound faded slowly, not ending, but preparing. The woman lifted her hands just enough to pause, allowing the music to breathe. The audience waited, hearts full, knowing something important was still coming. The pause in the music felt heavy but peaceful. It was the kind of silence that carried meaning, not emptiness. No one clapped. No one spoke. Everyone waited, held gently in the moment. The woman lowered her hands back to the keys and continued. The sound returned softly at first, like a careful step forward. Then it grew, steady and clear, as if the music had found its final voice. This part of the piece felt different. Carried confidence without needing to prove anything. The notes flowed with calm assurance, shaped by years of understanding rather than effort. The woman's fingers moved freely now. There was no hesitation, no doubt. She trusted herself fully. Each note felt honest, unforced, and deeply personal. The audience leaned in again, though many had never leaned back. They felt they were witnessing something rare. Not just a performance, but a moment of truth. Her mother watched with quiet joy. The tears on her face had slowed, replaced by a peaceful smile. She had known this moment would come someday, even if she did not know when or how. The music carried a sense of completion, as if it was gathering everything that had come before and shaping it into something whole. The sadness softened. The longing eased. What remained was strength. The woman's posture was relaxed but strong. Her shoulders stayed loose, her movements natural. She was no longer aware of being watched. The piano was her only focus. A man in the audience placed his hand over his mouth, overcome by emotion. He did not expect to feel this way. He had arrived with judgment and was now leaving with humility. The organizer stood quietly, hands clasped in front of him. He felt grateful that he had not said no when she asked to play. Some opportunities should not be questioned. The music swelled gently, not in volume, but in depth. The sound wrapped around the room like a warm blanket, steady and reassuring. The woman pressed the pedal lightly, blending the notes into a smooth wave. The piano responded beautifully, filling the space with rich tones. Listeners felt as if the music was speaking directly to them, telling stories they had lived themselves. Missed chances, silent strength, love that never faded. The woman's mother closed her eyes briefly, letting the sound wash over her. In that moment she felt complete peace. As the melody climbed, the woman's fingers moved with elegance and ease. Each phrase landed exactly where it needed to, without rushing or delay. People who had once laughed now sat with bowed heads, listening deeply. There was no embarrassment left, only respect. The woman's breathing stayed calm and even. She was fully present, fully alive in the music. The piece began to slow, guiding everyone gently toward the end. The sound softened again, becoming thoughtful and tender. The room felt warmer, as if the music had drawn everyone closer together. The woman held a note just long enough to let it settle into silence, then continued with a final gentle phrase. Her mother opened her eyes and looked at her daughter with pride that needed no words. The woman felt a quiet release inside her. Years of holding back, of placing herself second, seemed to loosen their grip. The final section approached, and the music felt like a farewell and a promise at the same time. The audience stayed completely still, afraid to disturb the moment. The woman played the last few notes slowly, carefully, allowing each one to speak. When the final note faded, she lifted her hands and rested them softly in her lap. The silence returned, deeper than before. For a moment no one moved. Then a single clap echoed through the hall. Another followed. Soon, the room filled with applause, rising quickly, strong and sincere. People stood, one after another, moved beyond words. The woman remained seated, surprised by the response. She did not smile right away. She simply looked toward her mother. Her mother stood carefully, supported by her cane, clapping with tears in her eyes. The woman stood then and turned fully toward her. Their eyes met, and in that look was gratitude, love, and understanding. The applause continued, filling the hall with warmth. For the first time that evening, the woman allowed herself a small smile. She bowed her head slightly, not for the audience, but for her mother. The music had ended, but the story was not over. The applause slowly faded, but the feeling in the room stayed. It lingered in the air like a gentle echo, warm and sincere. People remained standing for a moment longer, unsure if sitting down too quickly would break what had just happened. The woman took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Her hands felt light, almost trembling, not from fear but from release. She turned back to the piano for a brief moment and rested her fingers on the edge, as if saying goodbye to an old friend. When she finally stepped away, the organizer approached her carefully, almost respectfully. His voice was softer than before. He thanked her not with excitement, but with honesty. It was clear he understood that what had happened was not ordinary. Others began to gather nearby. Some smiled warmly. Some nodded in quiet respect. A few tried to speak but stopped, unsure what words could match the moment. The woman listened politely, but her attention kept drifting back to her mother. Her mother stood near the aisle, waiting patiently. The woman walked toward her, moving slowly, as if she did not want the moment to end too quickly. When they reached each other, they embraced gently. Her mother's voice was soft when she spoke. She did not praise the performance. She did not talk about the audience. She simply said how proud she felt. That was enough. The woman smiled, a real smile this time, one that reached her eyes. Years of quiet effort, sacrifice, and love had led to this simple exchange. Around them, people returned to their seats, still talking quietly about what they had witnessed. Some spoke about the music. Others spoke about how wrong they had been to judge so quickly. A few asked questions about where she had studied or why they had never heard of her before. She answered simply. Life had taken her in different directions. Music had always been part of her, even when it was silent. There was no long explanation. She did not need one. The hall slowly returned to its normal state. Chairs shifted. Voices grew louder. The event moved on. Yet something had changed. The woman and her mother walked toward the exit together. Their steps were slow, unhurried. Outside, the night air felt cool and calm. They paused just beyond the door. Streetlights cast a gentle glow around them. For a moment, neither spoke. Her mother broke the silence first. She said that the music reminded her of many years ago, when the world felt full of promise. She said it reminded her that some dreams do not disappear, even when life becomes busy. The woman listened quietly. She felt lighter than she had in a long time. As they continued walking, the woman thought about everything that had brought her here. The choices she made. The moments she let pass. The times she doubted herself. She realized something important. Playing that piece had not changed her past, but it had changed how she saw it. Nothing had been wasted. Music had shaped her patience. Life had shaped her strength. Together, they had made her who she was. When they reached their car, the woman helped her mother inside carefully. Before closing the door, she paused. Her mother looked up at her and smiled. There was no sadness in her eyes, only peace. On the drive home, the city lights passed quietly by. The woman did not turn on the radio. She did not need sound. The music was still with her. She thought about the people who laughed at first. She did not feel angry. She understood now that people often judge what they do not understand. What mattered was that she had stayed true to herself. Later that night, after her mother had gone to rest, the woman sat alone in the quiet. She thought about the piano at the hall, about the way it had responded to her touch. For the first time in many years, she felt a gentle pull toward the future. She did not know what would come next. She did not need a plan. She only knew that music was still part of her life, and always would be. The next morning, she helped her mother with breakfast as usual. Life continued simple and steady. Yet something was different. There was a calm confidence in her movements, a quiet certainty in her heart. She passed a small music shop later that day and slowed her steps. She looked through the window at the instruments inside. She smiled. The world had not changed overnight, but she had. Sometimes all it takes is one honest moment, one brave question, to remind someone who they truly are. And for her, it began with a simple request, made not for applause, but for love. Can I play this for my mom?